Okay, let's dive into this. We've got this incredibly detailed personal tracking document here. It's called Weekly Wellness and Project Review 45, and it covers the week ending November 9th, 2025. Think of it as like a super honest internal audit.
Exactly. And our job today, really, is to look at this log, this blueprint of someone trying to balance things, because the whole
Mhm.
setup is based on this idea. Health and recovery are the foundation,
Right.
and then projects, hobbies, that's how you build skills, find purpose.
Right. And what's really fascinating about this specific week is you see that foundation almost give way, even while, other areas were really strong. It's this weird contrast, like amazing consistency right next to a pretty major failure on a key metric.
It really highlights that tension, doesn't it? When you push the system, where does it bend or break? So let's start right there with that foundation piece that kind of buckled, sleep integrity.
Yeah, the numbers here are, well, they're a bit worrying. Average daily sleep dropped to 6.0 hours, just six. And you got to remember, their target is 7 hours. The week before, week 44, they actually hit 7.14.
hmm So 6.0, I mean, it meets their absolute rock bottom baseline. That's way off the recovery target. It's a failure by their own standards. And it wasn't just one bad night either. That's the key. 3 nights that week dipped down to only 5 hours of sleep. That points to something systemic.
Yeah, like a pattern emerging.
And the log itself is pretty insightful here. It fingers the culprit that planned strict time box for dinner and chores. The 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. slot, that just failed.
Ah, okay. And that's probably the bit you listening might recognize. We all have that kind of buffer time, right? That couple of hours in the evening, if that gets messed up.
The whole schedule can slide. For this person, when that 6 to 8 block didn't hold, it just pushed her bedtime later and later, sometimes even past midnight.
So the fix they noted for next week was basically brute force.
Pretty much. Aggressively get back to that time box, force an earlier bedtime.
Yeah.
But what I find interesting are the questions they left open. Like, why exactly did it fail? Was it just the chores running late? Or maybe that weird heat wave? It was monsoon season, apparently. Or, and this is subtle, maybe the wind-down phase, that light, non-stimulating activity part, got compromised.
Oh, that third one, I get that.
Yeah,
It's not just about flicking the switch off, is it? It's like, did you actually give your brain the quiet time it needed? Skip that, and even the sleep you do get feels less refreshing.
absolutely. That mental buffer zone is crucial. But here's the kicker. Look what they still managed to do despite the sleep deficit. Let's talk exercise. Because that part, well, it looks like a huge success this week.
It's such a stark contrast, isn't it? The physical activity side looks really strong. Average steps were 8,131 a day, which is great because they beat both their goals, the 6,000 minimum and the 8,000 target.
And it's not just hitting the number, it's the stability. They wanted to sustain that higher activity level from week 44, but do it safely. Watch out for overuse injuries. And they seem to have done that. But it raises a question, right? If the sleep foundation is shaky, how are you managing this high physical output without getting hurt?
That's the puzzle. It seems to go against their own rule about health being foundational. And the log shows it wasn't just like casual walking, it was gardening work, photo walks, plus this thing called Nico running, which added up to almost 60 hours practiced over the week. No, wait, 59 minutes total, averaging about 8.5 minutes a day. Sorry, misread that.
Okay, 59 minutes total. That makes more sense. And that Nico running probably explains the lack of injury. For anyone who doesn't know, it's basically slow jogging.
Right.
Japanese concept. Super efficient, low impact. You focus on a conversational pace, light foot strike. It's about consistency and safety, not speed. So you can rack up time without the usual stress.
Okay, so that's the loophole. High output is possible, even with dodgy recovery, if the activity itself is low impact and consistent, not about intensity.
Exactly. They managed the physical side really carefully, even while the recovery side was, well, struggling.
All right, let's look at segment 2 then. Diet, weight, mindset. Because surprisingly, despite the poor sleep, they actually did well with weight management.
Yeah, and this might be the most practical insight for anyone trying to manage their weight. It shows that even if a major input like sleep is off, you can still make progress if you're really tight on other controls, like your diet. They logged a net loss of 0.30 kilograms, which reversed a small gain from the week before. Healthy, steady progress.
And the keys to that success, what did they credit?
It boiled down to two main things, according to the log. Lightening up heavy dinners, and really sticking to that 70% fullness rule. It just shows how powerful focused calorie control and portion management can be. The body's pretty resilient. These consistent tweaks can sometimes override other negative factors, at least in the short term.
But it wasn't totally perfect, right? There were some notes.
Correct. A few challenges noted. They aimed for 2 deep-sea fish meals, only got 1 in, and mentioned some days had a higher carb ratio than planned. But the overall routine things like oatmeal, cooked salads, eggs, miso soup with veg, that structure probably absorbed those little bumps.
Structure helps smooth things out. And mentally, how was the mindset piece?
Pretty consistent there, too, it seems. They kept up with their usual quick meditation sessions, 1 or 2 minutes sitting, and also did that occupational walking meditation, specifically while raking leaves. Kind of cool.
And the overall mood assessment.
Logged as stoic as usual, which, okay, suggests good emotional regulation, but they did add a little note, a caveat, that sleep quality might be having a slight impact. So even if you're generally stoic, that physical stress can still poke through, can't it?
Yeah, it's still there under the surface.
Okay, so let's transition into segment 3. This is where the energy seemed to go. Projects, skills, hobbies, and you can really see where the focus was this week. Lots of creative flow.
Definitely. High engagement noted in discovery writing. Apparently, that led to a bunch of new ideas, especially around gardening and photography topics. The creative engine was definitely firing.
But then you see the trade-offs again. Classic example. Reading habits. They read some short fiction, kept that leisure activity going, but zero progress on the health book they were meant to be reading. It's called Use, which is basically the 3 highs control guide.
Oh, okay. That's important context. The 3 highs, meaning...
Yeah, high blood pressure, high blood sugar, high cholesterol, the stuff it's crucial to manage for foundational health. So they're actively putting off reading the one book that directly supports their own stated health goals.
Huh. Prioritizing the fun of discovery over the maybe slightly tedious but necessary self-improvement reading sounds familiar.
Totally human, isn't it? We lean into the flow state, avoid the homework. And you see a similar thing with coding. Activity was a bit sporadic, but productive when it happened.
Yeah, they submitted some pull requests, mostly fixing typos, it says. Across different code bases go Python, Elixir, Erlang, Rust. Keeping their hand in, looks like.
Right. But the big win was on their own Python projects. They finally figured out why the test coverage was wrong or low. And here's a really relevant note for today. AI didn't solve it, but it gave clues, which tells you something about where AI fits in, right? It's like a superpowered assistant, helps you frame things, points you in a direction. But the actual deep debugging, the architectural thinking, still needs the human brain. That's a solid step in building mastery.
Okay, good insight. Now, what about the more physical long-term stuff? The slow work gardening, home improvement, they were definitely active in the garden. Transplanting seedlings, trying to propagate seeds they collected on photo walks.
Yeah, hands-on stuff. But they note it's slow and tedious, especially with that heat wave making things tougher. And this is where that procrastination pattern really shows up again. Lots of physical activity deep into the doing part of gardening, but the organizing tasks, totally untouched.
Ah, right. So active work, yes, but maintenance or setup, not so much.
Exactly. Still pending. Organizing the plant rack, declutter the garden areas, and home improvement stuff too. Fixing curtains, a drawer, doing grout work on tile. All still on the list.
It's that classic creation versus maintenance thing, isn't it? Creating feels good, maintenance feels like chores.
Precisely. And fish keeping shows the same pattern. Feeding the fish. Done regularly, almost daily, active care. Yeah. But the setup tasks, that yellow-blue rack, finding new guppies for the outdoor ponds, still pending, stalled.
So active care gets done, expansion and logistics get pushed back. Makes sense. And lastly, photography. How did that fit in?
Seemed pretty integrated. Photo walks happened during grocery runs using the mobile's ultra-wide lens. And they were actively researching cameras, mobile, DSLR, mirrorless, thinking about what fits their style. So continuous practice woven into daily life.
Okay, so let's try and tie this all together. What's the big picture takeaway from this week's log?
Well, if you connect all the dots, the data is kind of shouting one main lesson, I think. The self-tracking system worked. It flagged the critical failure point, that 6 to 8 p.m. time box. But the person made a clear trade-off. They prioritized and successfully managed physical output steps, weight loss, the low-impact exercise. But it came at the direct cost of recovery input, namely sleep duration.
Right. So for you, the listener, what's the lesson here? I guess it's a stark reminder that doing really well in one area, like smashing your step goal or having great creative sessions, doesn't just magically cancel out a failure in a foundational area, especially recovery. You can't really bargain with your sleep need just because you exercised a lot, can you?
You really can't, not sustainably anyway. And that brings up a really interesting, maybe provocative final thought for people to consider. Think about it. This person kept up over 8,000 steps a day, managed tedious chores like gardening, even with a heat wave, making things harder. So the question is, how do you sustain that kind of high activity level of the projects, the exercise, the chores, without letting it constantly eat into that non-negotiable recovery time like the 7 hours of sleep they needed? It makes you wonder if the active time itself needs an even stricter boundary, maybe more rigid than the one for dinner and chores, specifically to fence off and protect that essential downtime. What do you prioritize protecting?